know a lot of people watch us and don't put on the volume. Well, we've got a chance now, just turn that volume up. Turn it up a little bit, because you're going to like this. According to Adcorp's Employment Index, the economy shed just above 48,000 jobs during March. Loane Sharp, Labour economist at Adcorp, joins us for more on this. Well, we've got a couple of debates going on at the moment, Loane, but maybe let's just start with the 48,000 jobs. That's more in your, from your numbers than one of the Stats SA analysis said for the whole of last year were being created.
Yes, that's right. Stats SA says that last year 507,000 jobs were created in 2013 in the formal sector.
Okay, well, we know that that's not great, but they had another one where they interviewed companies who said 39,000 jobs.
39,000. So okay. Stats SA doesn't even have a coherent number within themselves for the same formal sector of the economy. And this is just completely ridiculous. We found ourselves in a situation now that Argentinian banks found themselves a few years ago, when there was just no credibility to government inflation figures, and the banks got together and started producing their own. I think that's what's emerging in South Africa. More and more employment statistics are contested terrain. People don't take Stats SA's figures seriously, except for those who are in service of Stats SA. And I welcome the debate. I think it's a critically important thing.
We're going to hear from Pali Lekotla in just a moment. We've got a clip with him. But someone else from the private sector, Sajal Singh from Coface, said that he also disagrees with both you and Stats SA. Let's have a look at that report now, or rather a clip, and see exactly what he had to say, and perhaps you can respond.
We're very stats focused. South Africa as a country, as an economy, as a people, we're very much concerned with certain numbers like that, with over 25%, 26% unemployment. That's not true. That is based on true statistical data from the revenue services with minor adjustments for estimations, but it's talking about tax-paying people. Now, what about the very small entrepreneurs in rural areas starting up a little business of his own? Is he technically unemployed? The stats would say it is.
So he reckons unemployment number is 16%, that the stats are all wrong. Has he got a point?
Yeah, he's definitely got a point. At Adcorp, we come to 11.3% as the unemployment rate, if you include all the informal sector workers who are not counted properly by Stats SA. Just to give you a sense of the...
I mean, government, surely Zuma should listen to this and
trumpet
it from the rooftops.
You would think so.
11.3 versus 24, it's a big difference.
But remember, there's a whole unemployment industry now. There are academics, there are government officials, there are NGOs who have built a whole industry around the unemployment problem. The whole social grants business, which is a multi-billion rand a year business, depends critically on this assumption we have around unemployment. But just to give you a sense of the discrepancies, SARS tells us that for the 2013 fiscal year, there were 15.2 million taxpayers during the year. Stats SA tells us that there were 10.1 million employees over that same period. This is a tremendous discrepancy. It seems like Adcorp's the only critic of Stats SA, but we know that the National Treasury, we know that the Minister of Finance and other important branches of government totally discredit and disregard Stats SA's figures.
Well, let's see what Stats SA itself has to say. Pali Lekotla, Statistician General, so the big boss there at Statistics South Africa, insists that his numbers are correct. This is what he had to say to us.
You have to believe in both. When you look at the structure of the economy, you've got to use establishment information. Because when you go to a household, where you are employed is not always as clear. Because when you ask the person who is your employer, for instance, people working on the mines, outsourced as cleaners on the mines, they will say they are working for a mining company, when actually they are in cleaning services. So this is the difference. Whereas when you go to the establishment, which is a mine, it will tell you how many people it employs on the mine. So the two are perfectly correct.
So I don't know. Well, you know, there's all kinds of speak, and I suppose there's a special stats speak. But what he was referring to there were the two reports that came out of Stats SA, the household survey, which showed 509,000 jobs were created last year, which the politicians love, of course, and then the survey that came from the companies, which said 39,000 jobs were created. Is he making sense to you?
Well, there's a big contest between how big the formal sector is and how big the informal sector is. We know from Stats SA data that the formal sector is in decline. We don't know from Stats SA or anyone else, including Adcorp, how big the informal sector is. There are suggestions from the Business Trust and others that the number of small businesses has been undercounted by about 5.6 million people. There are analyses from Bank of America Merrill Lynch where they took aerial photography of business communities in informal settlements and pieced together a picture that showed informal sector activity was about 30% more than Stats SA appreciates. Stats SA, using a German and Canadian style methodology, is not getting to grips with the nature of the South African economy, which is overwhelmingly and increasingly informal.
But this has got relevance as well for the way this country is governed. If you think that we've got organised labour, part of the government, making decisions, yet disorganised labour, if you like, or informal labour would be much larger if what you're telling us now is accurate than those who are employed in the formal sector.
You know, mining unionisation is 78% of the workforce, and if you put mining out of the equation, for the rest of the private sector, the unionisation is only 12%. So unions don't have nearly the influence in the workforce, national workforce in general, that they do in the mining or the public sectors where they are dominant.
Or in government. You mentioned mining. You've got some novel ideas on how to fix the platinum strike.
Yeah, I think management has been terribly weak. They should extend their litigation against the trade unions for, or AMCU in particular, for loss of earnings due to worker intimidation, etc. They should join in that litigation the CCMA and the Minister of Labour for failing in their official legal duty of promoting labour peace. They should stop giving back pay to workers who return from strike, and no doubt a deal will emerge in the platinum sector where the platinum producers give workers back pay for these 3 months. Why would a worker lose out on 5.6 billion rand collectively in wages if they didn't feel that there was some prospect, historically appropriate and correct, that the mines would reimburse them for the money spent out of work?
So they shouldn't give any back pay.
They shouldn't give
And
any
so
back
if
pay.
you want to go on strike, you're not going to get paid. We won't roll over as we always have.
Exactly, and I think it's really for the mines to be strong at this point. But here again, we deal with government interference. We've got government interfering at every level of these negotiations. The CCMA is not an honest broker. We've seen that in the criticisms that the Chamber of Mines have made of the CCMA.
Did Elise Stradom tell the truth? When
Yes,
was
she
quoted in
did,
Sunday Times?
absolutely.
So why does everybody dissociate themselves from her?
Well, because business in general doesn't want to be seen to be criticizing government, and BUSA probably is more politically attuned than its individual business members. BUSA is a political flop. It doesn't represent businesses' attitudes toward government and government action. So I think BUSA has totally lost relevance, and I think that's why we're seeing individual action from Amplats and Impala and Lonman, because BUSA has left them out in the cold. BUSA won't, BUSA is so much in the pocket of government that it won't present any adverse impression to government in general.
How can you say these things when we don't hear them from anyone else? You hear them whispered. You hear them being spoken of quietly, but not publicly in the way that you do.
Yeah, I think Adcorp gives me a wonderful platform, and Richard Park is really brave to let me out on the airwaves. I think our primary intention is to draw attention to the crisis of unemployment in South Africa, because we're in the business of employment. But in the process, many other things become related. Government interference in the labour market, government's connection with trade unions. I think many people think these things. I don't think that I'm saying anything that someone employing their common sense would disagree
Rational
with.
and logical. That was Loane Sharp, Labour economist at Adcorp.